You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Our dream is to create the ultimate virtual reality flying experience. We want you to feel like you're really there as you glide, maneuver, and destroy your enemies. To make our dream a reality, we're building the highest resolution VR headset to date with an unprecedented 200-degree field of view. Introducing PiMax 8K VR. When you put on a conventional VR headset, the first thing you notice is that your vision is narrow and surrounded by darkness. But with our headset's 200 degrees of view, you get an expansive, natural view of the virtual world. So you are free to move your eyes and use your peripheral vision to own every corner or defeat every enemy.
Field of view was everything that I've been wanting in virtual reality.
I thought that was like being in VR, and this one is like looking through like tiny binoculars.
A view this wide requires maximum clarity, so we're using a 4K display for each eye, totaling over 16 million pixels, more than 6 times the resolution of current VR headsets.
It was amazing. I couldn't see any pixels. I could read all the text, like kind of far away, no problem.
We've worked hard to make PiMax 8K VR a smooth experience with a high refresh rate and low latency, even on modest hardware.
The clarity of the screen is great. There's no deceitful motion blur that I noticed. It makes you feel far more immersed in the experience than any other headset.
To deliver a complete VR experience, PiMax 8K VR supports full positional tracking and includes 2 positionally tracked controllers, so you can pick up objects and wield weapons. We've also built in speakers to bring realistic sound to your experience, and even added optional eye tracking and hand motion support. This isn't yet another VR hardware product. We're committed to building a complete and open VR system that's fully compatible with mainstream VR content platforms and existing accessories. Our goal is to make VR better for everyone. So we are collaborating with industry partners to foster a culture of open innovation in the global VR community. And we've already published our open SDK, so you can create your own projects for 8K VR. We aren't new to VR. We have already delivered over 30,000 of our PiMax 4K headsets in less than 6 months. We've built close relationships with manufacturing partners and have been traveling around the world demoing our new 8K headset and getting feedback from researchers, gamers, and developers to make sure that we're building a VR system that you'll love. And we're already working with partners like Disneyland to take VR beyond the home. By designing our products with these amazing experiences in mind, we make sure that they're more than capable of delivering a world-class home VR experience.
We are very excited to launch our new VR headset on Kickstarter. We are looking for friends and partners to support us to make VR fly real. Back us and get an 8K VR headset, and keep in touch with us to share your VR dreams. Thank you for your support.
Morning, everybody. Hi, this is Mike Bolzer of All Things 3D in Review for 9/23/2017, and that was the full Kickstarter promotional video that I have behind me now for the world's first 8K VR headset. Now, that should be a screaming, what would you call it, proclamation of the possibility of this being a complete failure. Now, even though this thing is almost obtained $1 million, why do I feel like this is going to be another 6 cents debacle? One of the reasons is, if you notice what I've got on my head here, it is the PiMax 4K headset. And I'm going to get into a little bit of why I feel if you back this or you plan to back it, you're going to be wasting your money. So let's kind of go through what you get with this item. First of all, the PiMax 8K is actually 2 4K LCD screens. Now, they do indicate that they're low persistence, but this has been a Chinese, what do you want to call it, advertising or marketing point from a number of LCD vendors that I have talked to in the design of my own headset. And the problem is that even though that you can push down the latency, you still have the LCD phosphor. Now, in saying that, it appears that Sharp, who makes these small 3-inch LCD panels for the mixed reality side, they seem to work pretty well, but you still have some of the other issues with LCD, and one of them is you're not really going to get that deep black that you normally see with OLEDs. So that's one factor, and being in an isolated environment, having a very dark, what would you call it, very black background is very important. So that's going to be one of the other issues. The other is these are large 4K panels. I would say probably about 5 inches. And one of the things when I was in design of my own headset and talking to some of these manufacturers and vendors of why you see these smaller panels, let's say in the Oculus VR CV, as well as the HTC, and even in the mixed reality headset, is because there is some issues with the physical size and how quickly it can refresh that entire panel. There is some physical or physics involved here that kind of minimize, or yeah, I guess the minimal latency that you can see from a physical substrate. Now, again, maybe there's some magic here that I'm not familiar with, but this is one of the reasons you see these smaller panels. That would not be the case here. So the other thing that I want to bring out is some may be saying, well, you know, the Sony is a full panel, but if you look really close, if you pull the Sony PlayStation VR headset apart, is that its panel is actually two panels in one. It's like literally on either on the same substrate or they're bonded together, but you can definitely see a delineating line between the left and right. So the other thing is on these 8K, it's literally two 4K panels together. Now, keep in mind when they say 8K, all they're really identifying is that each eye is receiving 4K. Now, this still is something much better than what we've seen in the past. Hence the long view. It kind of reminds me, what was that movie with Van Diesel? Pitch Black. Do you remember the monsters in that movie? That's what that kind of reminds me of a little bit. Okay, so what do we get if we back them? So let's go. The early bird, which is interesting, most early birds are done, but it appears that you can still get an early bird of $349. And you already have to have a Steam VR, HTC lighthouses, and controllers. So even though the price is $349, you still have to buy those, which I think is about $300 to $400 cost, if I remember correctly. And then you can get the 5K basic Kickstarter special, which I believe this early bird is also the same thing. So even though they tout it as an 8K, because of the way they upscale, it's only limited to 5K. And then I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. There was a nice article on, Tested, where they actually had an interview with the CEO and actually had an opportunity to try it. And what was interesting about that is they asked him about this upscaling, and they said that would be available in this particular model, and there might be a pro version, because he kept pushing, can you actually use this at 8K if you have the proper hardware? And even though the CEO didn't speak English very well, he pretty much said yes to anything that would be possible, yet there didn't seem to be any clear indication that anything would be possible. And I'm going to keep wearing this on my head because I actually own their touted 4K, which is actually even higher resolution than anything out there. And what are the caveats behind this that they did not identify in their marketing? And in fact, when I tore this apart, I found that the controller chip in this headset had actually scratched or etched away the markings, so you couldn't tell that the chip that they had in here had no way possible this can actually run at full 4K at 90 frames per second or even 70. It was limited to 60 or below. In fact, in some cases, the 4K was only at 30 frames per second. So very misleading, and I feel that this is going to be the same thing here. All right, let's go back and see what they say, VR in your eyes. Now, so some of the cool things, if we look at the shape, is because you have basically one panel per eye, that should give you a larger peripheral. But as in the tested article, they are using original content to actually get advantage of this 200 FOV, you have to create specific content to it. And this has been another issue with this company, is that they have put out very poor software and updates let's see, in the past I kind of gave up to it about 6 months ago, but they've given poor updates to their firmware. In fact, if you do it improperly, you can actually break this particular device. And in fact, I had to actually go through them to reset it so that I could build it again. So that was one of the areas that was a problem. The other area with this device that was a problem is that the plugins that were made it necessary to be able to use with Windows initially did not work with Steam. When they eventually came out for Steam, there were some issues with that as well. Mainly, you couldn't use them with the controllers. It had some limited capability, and I found that the IMU, which does the 3 degrees of freedom, which is your orientation, was lacking. It kind of rotated incorrectly. I felt there was lag in it. And then the panel itself was an LCD 4K panel with the inherent problems of LCD. One being this was a 4K panel. I would probably think it's probably very similar to the Sony. First of all, it was a 5-inch panel. It had some nice optics with it, but the optics were made for a larger panel. So you could literally see the edges of the screen, which kind of broke that immersive quality. And yes, it was of higher quality. So you would see about 2K per eye, which is pretty good. It's better, obviously, than 1280p that most headsets can do. So if you're watching movies, this would be better. Now, again, if we throw 2 panels, 1 per eye, we should get a much better experience. But the sad thing is, again, it's going to be the firmware and the plugins for this 200 FOV, because right now all they're doing is stretching the standard, what would you call it, 16 by 9, actually it's all 1-to-1 format because each eye, into a larger FOV. And even though tested indicate that they kept the central portion, they had to stretch out the outer portion, so you are losing some quality in your peripheral. Now, they did make a point that the peripheral, you're going to be a little bit blurry because you don't have the same detail. But if you kind of glance over to one side or another, you can actually concentrate to see more detail, and it wouldn't even be there. So this is not, in my opinion, a good direction to go if you're wanting to claim this high detailed headset. Because it's all false at this particular point. And if you can't actually provide content at 200 degrees FOV in its native format, that will be a problem, which means you're going to have to get developers to develop games specifically for this. And keeping in mind, not only do we have the HTC Vive, we have the Oculus, and now the Microsoft mixed reality headsets. So this is going to be something else developers are going to be working with. We'll see. Obviously, they are going to have a bunch of these out here. So let's get back to the hardware for a moment. So we have these LCD displays, as I indicated already. They're not going to have the blacker blacks that you're going to see with OLED. I am doubtful that their latency is going to be as low as they claim it's going to be. There's some tricks being involved there. And also, the fact is, if you want to get true 8K without upscaling, you're going to need a beefy machine, and they didn't indicate that you could use this, I'm assuming, with some version of DisplayPort, but literally 2 channels of DisplayPort. So you'd have to have like 2 Titans or 2 DisplayPorts. You have to have a very beefy machine in order to do this. They do claim that they've got some of their own hardware techniques in this. And here they're showing the comparison. So even though, yes, you're going to get a clear, and this is the PiMax 4K, which is on my head. So yes, it is a clearer screen. But the problem is you can see the edges, breaks the immersion, and it's only good at 4K at 30 frames per second. Now keep that in mind. And if they push that with this 8K, and claim, see, even though they say they're getting this PiMax 5K at 90 hertz, I wonder if it truly will be this, or will it be upscaled in order to support this. And the other thing that was interesting with the 4K is that they claimed it would get 60 or 70 frames per second, but there was no way it was going to get that because the HDMI, the MIPI chip in this thing was only capable of, I believe, 1.3, which maxes out, I think, about 2K at 60, maybe a little bit more than that, but there was no way it was going to reach 4K. So that's very disappointing. Lighter options. So here we go. They have this brain warp functionality. I'm wondering what that will be. I'll have to spend a little bit more time on that. And then they talk about the VR content in the Steam. Again, only reason this is working is that they're creating a fabrication from the original content in order to stretch it across the full screen. One of the points mentioned in the, again, I keep mentioning tested because they actually had some hands-on in the testing, and there will be a link in the show notes of their video itself. But one of the things that was mentioned in tested was the, what was it, some Bard's Tale or something like that, which ran perfectly at 90 frames per second. He noticed some actual latency and blurring of the screen as he was playing the game. So that's not a good thing. So, you know, it may, again, they may claim, and they would be true, that they would actually reach 8K, meaning 4K per eye only. But there's a lot more in order to get a really good experience. So again, if it were my money, I'm not going to back this. I think there is going to be even better products out there. One of the things is with these new Samsung wider screens, we might be seeing that incorporated in a 2-screen format. And a number of these items aren't even available yet. And like I said, I actually have the 4K version, and they promised a lot and under-delivered. And I have a feeling we're going to see the same thing here. And even though I have a feeling you will get your product, I think you'll be underwhelmed with it. And sadly, it'll probably hit the closet. Also, the point is they use the controllers that supposedly they will have in a future kit, and they sucked. So I would highly recommend, if you do get this, just buy the HTC controllers and light towers, which is probably the only good thing. Sadly, it wasn't their technology that's going to make this thing a good product. Here's their website. Obviously, they proclaim this as their big unit now, and here's the 4K, which is on my head, which again is an okay system for its price, but because sadly it was an outside vendor from China, that the number of games that were specifically made for 4K didn't come out. The fact is that it's not necessarily its resolution, but its frames per second rate was poor. Again, I don't see this being. And the other thing that really bothers me is that there's another company, and I had mentioned this on a preview, was it StarMax, that also has this extended screen. Theirs is very pricey. They've teamed up with, what is it, IMAX, in order to have a little presentation. But it's funny how it looks a lot like that. And I wouldn't, as I mentioned on my show previously, is PiMax going to be in some, you know, litigations because of IP? Because again, they're very similar in the design, and I would think that probably this StarMax has probably put some time into patenting some of their ideas. Okay, so that's about it. I wish I had the YouTube video, but you can find it. It'll be in the show notes for the, actually, hang on, I'll find it here in a second. Let's bring it up. Okay, so they're giving their summary, and it's funny, they really want to like this. They ask a lot of great questions, but after trying it, they do give it some, you know, very doubtful, or very which is they're very concerned on the possibilities that this may not be what it appears to be, and they hope for more of it. So, like I said, this will be in the link. It's about 40 minutes they go through it. They do a good job. The interview leaves a little bit to be desired. As I mentioned, the CEO's English isn't really good, and he just seems to say yes to all their requests. And it appears these two hosts from Tested know more about the products, ask a lot of great questions. I really like, I can't think of his name right now. I want to say David Wang, but He does a great job. Obviously, he knows his stuff, asks a lot of great questions. So this is a great shout out to Tested and this particular thing. Again, I think if you watch it, I would not watch this and then say, oh, I want to get this product. But at $349, it's not a bad price. And even if it doesn't work out, you still have maybe a nice viewing center for movies or something like that. But who knows? It might be a great product. Give them a small little bit of doubt. Benefit of the doubt? I guess that's the word. Okay, let's get into our first news item. Actually, I'll have an update from the past. As you know, I've covered and I'll take this thing off my head. I've covered in the past oh, this is a mixed reality. Did I get the wrong one? Jeez. So this is a test to make sure that your machine is compatible, but the latest update that has come out has actually tweaked the performance even a little bit better, mainly for non-discrete computers that are running maybe on the integrated. As I have used in the past, I have a NUC system that has the Iris 620, and it seems to run really well. There's some things that it didn't perform as well, but for their what do they call it? Cliff House, it ran really well, and there were some other things that ran as well. So some of the things that they identify here, if your graphics aren't supported or your CPU, you can still run it. They just say that actually in some cases it won't even start up. In fact, I tried to use this on my little HP tablet, what is it, the Spectre X2, and had problems with that. It wouldn't come up because I wanted to see what the lowest performance is. So there might be some way to go ahead and hack the registry to get this up and running, but I didn't spend any time doing so. So a small NUC for about $400, $500, depending on how much RAM you want to put in it. As I mentioned on the show before and showed off, I created a belt system with a Anton Bauer power supply and was able to get about 2 to 3 hours worth of battery time and literally be able to walk around with my mixed reality headset. So super cool. I would think that there'll probably be more of this coming in the future. Okay, on to the next item. So engineer, I thought this was really nice from a 3D fabrication standpoint. One of the things that you may have seen metals that you've been able to 3D print, but sadly, aluminum has been one of those things that's very difficult. And even in standard processes, it's very difficult, welding and so forth. But this company's figured a way to create a powdered system and using SLS to actually use aluminum. And I have a little video here that I'll let them talk a little bit more about this.
HRL's researchers have made a revolutionary breakthrough in metallurgy that solves both a major 21st century difficulty and a significant problem dating back to the origins of high-strength aluminum. Metallurgy is a discipline that includes the physics and chemistry of metal structure, as well as the link between a metal's microstructure, how the metal is processed, and how those factors affect the metal's properties. The HRL team just developed a technique called nanofunctionalization. It enables successful 3D printing of high-strength aluminum alloys, including those of the 6000 and 7000 series, commonly used in aerospace and automotive applications.
Of the thousands of commercially available metal alloy systems, only a handful of about 10 alloys can be readily 3D printed.
Until now, the higher strength alloys, although very desirable for engineering applications, such as airplane fuselages, had to be fastened by riveting or other methods because they were not weldable. They were also not available for 3D printing, known as additive manufacturing.
We've developed a methodology that allows us to 3D print any metal system.
Additive manufacturing of metals is essentially equivalent to welding. You're taking layer by layer and welding each layer on top of another. And so that adds the constraint that the metals you put in there generally have to be weldable. And so what we did at HRL was we took an unweldable metal and made it weldable so that it can now be processed in conventional additive manufacturing equipment.
In 3D printing, parts begin as a powder fed into the printer. Construction begins as the machine lays down a thin layer of metal powder that is melted and re-solidified by a rastering laser only in the areas that will make up the final part. As the metal in each successive layer fuses together, it also fuses to the layer below. The new breakthrough is a treatment for the metal powder that controls the way the material solidifies in this process, without hot cracking and other problems that were inherent in 3D printing with these materials. Because melting and solidifying locally is essentially welding them together, this treatment can also be used to weld previously unweldable alloys.
We know that we can induce lattice match nucleation. And so that's essentially taking these atomic scale phenomenon where these atoms need to line up perfectly in the right spot to create these micron-sized grains, which then create millimeter-sized features, which are ultimately built into a meter-sized part, which can then be used on a variety of different vehicles. That is, in its essence, true optimization from the atomic scale up to the component scale. Now that we've 3D printed the metal that before now could never be 3D printed, what we've done is open the door so that really any new metal can be processed using additive manufacturing equipment.
This amazing leap in technology could launch the future of automotive and aircraft parts that can be manufactured faster, cheaper, more accurately, and with high-strength materials never before available.
Well, there you go. So as you can see, it obviously is an exciting process. It's funny. Obviously, they want to make this seem more common than it is, but the fact is that it's an SLS process using lasers. The fact is that you have this unique powdered microstructure that allows them to fuse the layers together. But again, as they mentioned, they'll be able to be used to create components that can be bolted together for automobiles as well as aluminum fuselages. And my experience with aluminum is that it is very difficult to work with. Melting point is extremely high. So the fact that they've accomplished this is something that really provides a lot of merit to this company. I would assume that this is a very pricey process. In fact, you probably won't see it at Shapeways or some of these more consumer-based 3D fabrication, but who knows? So it'd probably be mainly for the, as they said, the airline industry and maybe spacecraft and automobiles. So we'll see. I'll keep an eye on it, but great looking process. So let's get right into our 3D design. I've got actually two products. My friends over at Occipital sent me that they have this new app available. As you know, I've covered it several times now, including my own apps. By the way, Core It is still coming out soon. So if you've got one of the iPhones that support it, or actually as I called it, Core It, or if you've got a Pixel, either the new one or, as we know, in a couple of weeks, Pixel 2 will be coming out. I will have my app available. Doing some finishing touches on the conclusion of it. It's short, but it should give you a couple of scares, I hope. But I should have that out next week or the week after if I keep pushing forward with it. So back to this thing. It's called Tap Measure. Tap Measure, it's based on ARKit, and I can actually give a little demo, but it's kind of a full-featured measuring device. Some people complained it doesn't measure very well, and I'm just going to go through a little process here. I won't actually go out with the tape measure to make sure. I mean, if you've got one of the phones that can support ARKit, try it yourself. But as you can see behind me, I've got the little screen. It works in portrait mode. So let's see what we can do here. There we go. Okay, so we're going to measure. So you select point at the floor or another horizontal surface. Okay, there we go. All right, and then some people found it a little confusing. Maybe they're right. Okay, I tapped it. It's not doing anything. Well, that's not a good thing. Had it working earlier. Essentially, you could tap on one point. Let's see if it'll work. Yeah, so it appears to pick up the surface, but then it doesn't allow me to tap in order to create one reference point and then allow me to go to another point on the floor, tap it again to get a measurement. As you can see, it's not working. So some other people have complained about that as well. It's a little confusing. Let's try this. Okay, point at the surface and tap to select it. Tap what? Well, occipital, I'm trying. I guess I'm not smart enough to use this. I don't know what those dots are. Oh, well, sadly, I can't get it to work. Maybe I don't have enough space. So some people have asked how this works. Well, it's fairly simple because it takes, in combination with the camera, once it determines in this case, flat surface being the floor, it then can, once you tap a location, and then as you move to a new location, it takes the gyro information and provides basically standard trigonometry formulations to determine one point in the rotation, which is an angular movement, to determine the other. And then from there, we can obviously figure out distance. Some people ask, well, why doesn't it work vertically? That's because these planes are all horizontally based. There shouldn't be any, well, there might be, I haven't looked into it, but because you have these cloud points, you should be able to determine vertical planes as well, or at least be able to take those cloud points. I've been able to work with that and come up with other reference points. But in this case, very simple. They wanted to try their hat at it. Obviously, Occipital has a lot of experience in this kind of stuff. So there you go. You can download it. It's free. So I will leave that and go back to, just go to the iTunes Apple, download it. Again, like I said, it's free. Try it out. Maybe you'll have better luck than me. Come back on the show and say, hey, Mike, you don't know what you're doing. Okay, let's move on to the next item. I thought this was kind of cool. Obviously, I've talked a lot about SketchUp, and there's a free version of that. So anything else that comes out that kind of does the same thing better be free, and that would be the case for NeoWin. It's called Sweet Home 3D, and they just put out a new version. I played with this version or the previous version. Some of the things that it can do is allow you to create your floor plan, bring in items, and it has multiple areas to bring in furniture from different sites. Download it into it. And then let's see, I've got a little video to show you here too. So I guess I'll move forward with that. So there you go. So what I'm going to do now is show a little demo. I actually downloaded it. It's very easy. And there's a couple of demos in there, so I'm going to run it. Actually brought it up a little earlier. So here you go. The layout's pretty straightforward. Essentially, once you create your layout, you can populate it. Then gives you a columnar type table here with the type of furniture, its width, depth, and so forth. And then what I found, let's see if this is the actual product. You can create a virtual visit and then walk through it using your keyboard, your WASD keys to kind of walk through it. Again, you know, the quality isn't like what you'd see in Unreal or something like that, but there is, let's see if I can go back, a way to actually, let's see what we want to do. We don't, let's go back to aerial view. We can print, where's it at? There we go. Do a print preview, and the print preview is kind of cool because it actually has a built-in renderer. Oh, wrong thing. So you can render this, and the renders look pretty good. There's different quality levels. They keep a lot of the features of this kind of hidden, but you can get plugins, one of them to actually give you more capabilities in doing renders with this. I don't remember where it was at. And then basically it's a lot of these other applications where you build your floor plan, you can populate it. As mentioned, there is a, here we go, create photo. And then I'll just hit create, and then it starts to render it. And then obviously depending on the performance of your machine. And then you can set cameras up to different views. So, I mean, it's not as good as SketchUp in some areas, but if you need something very basic, the other cool feature that I liked about this, I haven't tried it yet, is that it has an OBJ export capability. So you could export your entire model and then be able to bring it into Unity or Unreal or Blender or something like that to spiff it up a little bit and turn it into something VR. I don't know. I'll have to contact them if they are planning to add a VR tool to this. That would be kind of cool. But if you need something very simple, straightforward in design, and I didn't have time to get it ready this week, but I think next week I'll be able to bring it up in the tech closet. I was able to, we're almost finished with our small bathroom, so I'm going to go ahead and do a 360 preview from back, gosh, when was it? Last December when I had somebody do a 360 before we actually moved out here of the bathroom and what it looks like today with a few VR presentations or perspectives thrown in there, just like I did with the fireplace. The results, you know, somewhat anticlimactic because with these tools now, you can get a very, very good representation of what something's going to look like. And more importantly, you can identify this with your contractors, and the contractors themselves will be able to have a better idea of what you're looking for. So I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, so let's move on. Where are we at? Next item. In our 3D in medicine section, I thought this was a great little piece. This is the University of geez, can't even say. Saskatchewan, right? Yes. This is an article, mainly research. Right now they're working with rats, but they've 3D fabricated, and they talk about the process here of doing so. Tissue for a heart. They patch the heart, and then they're able to basically, well, actually they can't test to see how reliable or the patch is taking place, but this patch allows normal cells to grow around it. This seems to be the case with a lot of this organic 3D fabrication, but they are not able to actually determine this unless they use X-ray imaging. And that kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit because I thought, okay, maybe it's a low resolution X-ray. No, that doesn't seem to be the case. It's a high intensity X-ray beam that allows them to detect this tissue and differentiate it from the actual heart tissue, and that could be an issue. Okay, oh, I just lost my, you know what? Helps to be on the right screen. Sorry about that. All right, so 3dprint.com. So here's your article here. They're developing this heart tissue. Right now it's being tested in rats. They had to also come up with a new process in order to actually observe the tissues, since it had to be differentiated from the normal tissue because they're, I guess, very identical. And they're using this new X-ray technology, which, as I said, raised some eyebrows, but it allowed them to detect it and actually see if the patch took place and actual material or the host tissue was growing around it. So look forward to seeing this and where this takes them. But the fact is that they're doing heart tissue now. Just be a matter of time that you'll just be able to go to a store and say, I need a new arm, leg, whatever. It's coming. That and your new brain that's AI enhanced. Okay, so on to the next item. This was somewhat of an expose by engineering.com. This is a company that I have talked about a lot. I saw them in 2015 at CES, and I was very impressed by, one, their low cost, but also the quality. And we've covered them over the last couple of years. They've not only created more and more sophisticated scanners, but they've also donated a lot of these to museums so they could scan their artifacts and then put them up on their website. So they're, in my opinion, doing a lot of things right in order to promote their products and also help archive a lot of the relics around the world by providing, I'm assuming just on rent or on loan, but the ability to have their scanners used, I think was a big plus for them. But this article talks about not only, it talks about their business, how many people are involved with it, the engineers that are involved with it, but something that was striking towards the end of this article, here's their scanner, is they also build printers. And one of the things that they're showcasing right now are the metal printers. And we talked about metal printers earlier as being a very cool process. And the fact is that they're able to do this. And then they also are working in creating scanners as well as fabricators in the dentistry industry. And here we're seeing it here, as well as jewelry. So they have really come a long way in the last few years with some very, very high-tech, polished products at a very reasonable price. And I thought something else that was very interesting up here talks about the number of patents that they've applied for and actually had authorized. Now, I don't know if these are worldwide or specifically to China, but they've done a lot of their own research. So for those who always feel that the Chinese just copy and paste, that clearly is not the case anymore. And we should be really keeping an eye on China as far as not only in their manufacturing prowess, but also their research and design prowess as well. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. Engadget had this. Sadly, Intel's Project Alloy has died. And that's, in my opinion, not really a great thing. This thing is very ugly looking. But what made this kind of unique was the fact is it was a standalone unit with inside-out tracking, all built in the headset. The problem I've had with these is, one, everything has to be confined to the headset. And this could be a problem because the headset itself has to contain the battery, or the battery has to be housed in the back of it. You have your display, you have your processor. So everything is confined to a small space, which means things have to be limited in performance in order to be, one, battery conscious, and two, lightweight and not generate a lot of heat. And this has been an issue. I think the solution, personally, develop a lightweight display unit and put the battery and processing unit on a belt system. I don't think that's too unrealistic. That way you keep this as light as possible and then the hardware can be expanded, the battery can be expanded in a separate unit. And I also have a feeling that these new Microsoft mixed reality headset had something to do with its demise, as well as Google's announcement on the 5th of October with their standalone system. And again, there's people scratching their head. They've moved very far in creating a phone type application. And the fact is, they're going to a standalone headset, which I don't think will be less than 500. We'll see where that goes, unless they've got something extremely outstanding. I still like the fact of having a lightweight headset with a belt system that can be switched out as things get improved in technology. Keeps the headset light. Then you can go out and buy an OEM version of some type of belt. Like I said, I had a Nook system that I could attach to my, maybe I'm just too much of a geek. That doesn't bother me, but I personally have to think this is somewhat hideous to have on your head as well. I'd rather have something lightweight, glass-like on my face, and then a belt unit. That's just my opinion. But they're gone. Bye. All right, on to the next thing. We're getting right into the tech closet. As you know, I've been working the last few weeks on my own budget VR or VR backpack. The results I cannot show you because I'm still waiting for it. I had gotten to the point where I had 160 watt, what was it, 11 volt to 20 volt power supply. And the sad thing is I bought it secondhand, used, and it did not function. Have not heard back from the company. I'm demanding a refund on it. But I have gone with another unit that actually has a USB output that allows me to check the voltages, and allows me, I'll probably create a little program for it so that I will be able to use it so that I can, when the battery is depleted or gone to a certain level, I can do a soft shutdown. But in saying that, I went to Costco, and I already have my screen up, which is too bad, but let me bring this up, yesterday, and I saw this. For $995, if I remember correctly, you can get this Legion level 520, which includes an i7, and that's a fairly decent processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and a GTX 1050 4 gig, a 256, is that what it says there? Can't read it. SSD, as well as a 1 terabyte hard drive for less than $1,000. When you add up the price, and then I looked at the size. Now I have an Asus that I bought some time ago, but it was about $1,300 for, was used, but this is obviously $300 less. The one that I have has a 1070 in it. This only has a 1050. But if you go out to their website, which is what I had here, if you can make do with only 8 gigs, which is what all my VR backpack has in it, and only want a standard hard drive, now I would recommend an SSD. I don't know why they didn't just create an SSD version, but you can add your own SSD into it. $719. And it includes the battery already. So when you add all the parts to the VR backpack, would this be a better idea, or the VR backpack? Well, that'll be something I'll have to explore. One thing that I noticed, it only has one HDMI output. So you could set it up, close the laptop lid. When you close the lid, they go to sleep. You'll have to make sure that doesn't happen. And then you'd have to create a mount system. Some people have just thrown them in the backpacks. I don't suggest that because you do need ventilation. And then they say it has about 4 hours of battery time. Now that may be game time, which is pretty good. So you could basically put an HDMI. It's got USB 3. The 1050 version of this would be excellent to be used with the mixed reality headsets that are coming out shortly. Again, throw this in what I would do is mount a little piece on the back, some type of bracket that you could detach it, put it on a backpack strap like I've used in the past with my own VR backpack. And again, with the GTX 1050, it would run circles around anything else that's embedded graphics or integrated graphics. And I have shown this already. I've used my prototype version of the GTX 1050 that I've had before work with this, and I've come up with the same or better quality than using integrated graphics with the mixed reality headset. The fact is that you could get this for $719. I don't know if that includes free shipping. Amazon shows this for $1,100. So this means this is actually a special at Lenovo, and you have to apply a coupon to this. I don't know if it's immediately taken off or after you buy it. You'll have to find out. Now, again, the screen isn't a high performing screen. It's only a 1080p, but if you're going to be using this for VR only, it doesn't really matter, does it? And then, like I said, it has the low end version only has a hard drive, but if you buy the one at Costco, it also includes this 256 SSD. And as I mentioned, 1050, 16 gigs of RAM. So if you're a Costco shopper, you got $1,000 or less, this might be something to pick up for mixed reality. Now, as I said, I've used the 1050 for the HTC Vive. It seems to run very well on lower quality games. I wouldn't say they're lower quality. I would just say that the ones that I have used, now there are supposedly some that really push your hardware from a VR perspective. I have not tried these, but a lot of the demos that come free, this thing worked adequately with the 1050. Again, remember the 1050 is not VR certified. It will work with it. So if you do move forward with this Legion, keep that in mind. Now, they do have a version with a 1060 in it, but then you're back up to $1,400 or $1,400. And then, do you want to get a laptop? Do you want to get the backpack at that price? My goal was to create something that was budget, that could run VR, maybe not high end, for less than $800. Again, this is $999, but the fact is you can go out to their website and buy this laptop for $719, pushes it under the $800. It only has one video output that I know of, but it does have a USB-C, two USB 3 ports, so you will be able to run your headset with it. And it says it gets 4 hours of battery time, and obviously hooking a headset is going to diminish that time, probably about 3 hours. And again, we don't know what load that was in order to get the 4 hours. But after adding the battery and everything else to my budget VR backpack, it's all self-contained. It's about the same size, but slimmer. So that's something to look at. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time looking. Let's see what the specs are for size. So 14.96 by 10.43 and 1 inch. So it's a little, with the battery itself, it is about maybe 1 inch longer. But it still would fit fairly well on your back, or at least it'll fit well on my back. So that would be very interesting. I know other people have done this with laptops, but most of the VR compatible laptops are $1,500 and above. So it's getting something for less than 800 would be very, very interesting. Oh, well, I'll see if I've got the budget to get this and we'll test it out. If somebody has already tested out and can come back to the show and let me know, I'd appreciate it. Like I said, on Amazon, this particular version with the terabyte is selling for $11.65, but you can go to Costco and get it for $9.95. Okay, and if you live in Portland, Oregon, it's no tax. So that's the price you would pay. Okay, well, that's about it. I was going to talk a little bit more about Unity today, but I decided not to because I don't want to give any of the spoilers away on Core It or Arc It or Dream It until they come out next week or the week after. So this is Mike signing off. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next Saturday on 3D in Review. Bye.